This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 658 with Christian Johnson, recorded on September 25th, 2025. Here at Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News reviews, product updates, and conversation. A lot of conversation tonight, all for the Average Tech Guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios, like I've done now for almost 15 years. And we'll post the show. Isn't that crazy to think, Christian? We'll post the show with some world-class show notes out there at the AverageGuy.tv. Big thanks to our Patreon subscribers. You guys do it each and every month. Appreciate you doing that. It helps me. Christian, I did pick up the new Apple AirPods to try with translations, right? Did you see the AirPod Pro 3 announcements that came out? Yeah. And I want to try them with I do a lot of work in other languages, so we're going to give it a try. You tempted by the new ones at all?
No, only because my current AirPod Pros just are so great. I will say that the new ones are probably the closest yet we're getting to the Gene Roddenberry vision.
Universal translator.
Yeah, but I'm happy to let the first guinea pigs give it a try and see what they like and don't like. So you'll have to tell me. You'll have to make me a believer.
At $250,
it's hard. Yeah,
it's hard to say no, right? Yeah. You're just like. Now they could have charged $500 for those things, right? And so it was like, I think I'm going to pull the trigger. The goal will be at work. I've got a big headset at work with a microphone, and when I'm going international, I'll put the earbuds in and put the cans over them to see if the translation works that close. We'll have to see. Who knows? We'll be giving it a try. Anyways, big thanks to our Patreon subscribers. That stuff helps with all that when you have to buy those. Well, of course, talking about them here on the show as well, and appreciate you guys. Thanks for everybody using the affiliate link out there for Amazon out on the site. Go to theaverageguy.tv. There's a link that says click on here, and you can click through it. And at that point, Bob's your uncle, and that supports the network. So thanks for all of you who've been doing that. Many of you have, and with the now it seems quarterly Prime days that are going on. Used to be once a year, then it seemed like it was twice, and now maybe it seems like it's once a quarter. Hey, that's all great stuff. Good for us, and appreciate you guys doing that on the network. Big thanks to Dr. Brian Freelander, who joined me a couple weeks ago, and appreciate him being on the show and all the conversation around assistive tech. If you haven't listened to that, 657, and you can check that out today. I mentioned it earlier, but Christian Johnson's here with me. Christian, we've been podcasting together for 15 years. Now, welcome back. Good to see you.
It's good to be back. 15 years. It's awesome.
Isn't that insane?
It is insane. I mean, so is seeing show number 658, all in the realm of insane, but I love it.
Listen, tonight I was in pain at the table, and I was like, I'm not going to do Home Gadget Geeks anymore. I told my family that. I was like, I'm done. I don't want to live anymore. And they were like, oh, really? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just in so much pain. It hurts so bad. But it is fun to get to this point and realize just how long we've been doing this, and it's so much fun. Thanks for coming along on the journey with me. You've been in many of these along the ways, and I appreciate your partnership in this. I appreciate your partnership with Maple Grove Partners and kind of hosting the site and all those things that goes along with it. So thanks for all that you do. Speaking of hosting, you're hosting a new little gremlin at your place. You've been out for a while. Give us the details as much or as little as you want to. And congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, no, thanks. It's been a lot of fun. He's just about 6 months now, and it's just, like everyone tells you, every day you wake up and blink and he's, bigger and stronger. And I call him the director of party services. He's just the life of the party, and is just a super bubbly and happy kid. Sleeps great, travels great. We've had him on planes, we've had him on road trips, we've had him in high mountainous terrain. We take that kid all over the planet, and he's just like, yeah, this is cool. So he's been a lot of fun, and it's it helps change your priorities in life a little bit. I live hour to hour sometimes, and that's okay. I still, get to do a lot of the things that I love, and I sleep relatively well. But yeah, it's like fitting a lot in and changing priorities a little bit, but it's been good.
That was the hardest for me, was just changing the routine.
Yeah.
And having, I'd come home from work. I was in the military when we had our first two, and you come home from work and the evenings, they're not yours anymore. Right. And there's things to get done and things to do, and it's a change in priorities and a shift in things. Ironically, it was, as my kids started getting older and, they're teenagers, we started podcasting. You realize how precious those evenings are. And I enjoy that. You're just at the very beginning of this, and you've got a great relationship with your parents. It just gets better as your kids become adults. And so you got a long way to go on that, but that's a pretty amazing piece. What's been your favorite part so far? What have you really enjoyed about being a dad?
It's cool getting to see and rediscover the world through a newborn, because they have no expectations of anything, right? Yeah. So it's just like things they find completely novel that you wouldn't necessarily, just takes a whole new intrigue in a way. Yeah. And so also just really learning like small things, like learning communication, nonverbal communication. I feel like you learn so much of that having a newborn that you wouldn't, unless you're, living with someone who is, blind or deaf or otherwise is not verbally communicative most of the time. You wouldn't get that experience regularly. But they're extremely expressive, even at very young ages. And so that's been a lot of fun.
They have a lot more understanding than you think. Because they can't talk. Our granddaughter is a year and a half, let's just say, and she's still not really talking. We're getting some grunts and some actions, mom and dad, some of those kinds of things. But she's still not talking a bunch. But please, thank you, and more in sign language shows up all the time, and they taught her that. So in her younger years, when she couldn't express it, but she knew she wanted it, like more is important. Like, can I have more? Right. I mean, and be able to express that in sign language. Just the other day, we were over there just the other night, and I said, "You want more?" And she went right to the sign, right? And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." And so it was super helpful. So that's really cool. They're pretty magical. They're not even crawling. I mean, for you're not even really seeing crawling or moving. You've got a whole
well,
you got a whole
funny.
thing.
He is super strong, and he's had like abs since 4 months. Yeah. So he's been sitting up at like 4.5 months, and he doesn't full crawl yet, although we caught him on his hands and knees 2 days ago in his crib, so he's getting kind of close, but he's like, screw it, I'll just roll around the room. So he just forward and backward rolls to where he wants to go, and then he sits himself up. So he's like very he's a little gym athlete.
Well, it's great. I mean, congratulations, and that's pretty awesome. And glad mom and baby are doing well, and that you guys are settling in and enjoying the family. It only gets better. Like it's pretty great. And by the way, just to be the old guy who says this, the first one is by far the easiest. They only get harder from here. So if you have aspirations for a second, that's not actually bad either. It's the third one that sends you over the edge. So just beware of what is yet to come if you decide to go that route. No pressure.
It's okay. I like a good challenge.
Yeah, no pressure either way. So, well, congratulations on that as well. Hey, last time we chatted with you as well, which I think was 6 months ago, pilot's license. How's that coming along? What are you up to on that thing?
We're pretty close. I'm actually tomorrow morning doing one of my last. It'll be my last flying requirement for instrument rating, which is to do the long IFR cross country. So. That'll be tomorrow morning. It'll be about 4 hours of flying, and then I'm trying to get the written exam and check ride ready by January. So it's kind of funny. Usually my routine of putting, once Judy goes down to bed, then I feel like I'm back in school because I'm getting out textbooks and diagrams and chat GPT and videos.
Is that good for what you're doing?
Oh yeah, I can there's a lot of things there's a lot of like textbook knowledge that you want to kind of memorize, especially around the standards and regulations. And so I can ask it for me to summarize topics really quickly that like maybe I watched a video about it a year ago or did some, quizzes a year ago about it, but I can just have it re-summarize the topic and compare it to my notes and kind of use it to re-review the topics very quickly. But I mean, all of the federal aviation regulations and IFR flying rules, I mean, those are all very easily ingested off the public internet. So ChatGPT has no problem making really digestible summaries out of that content.
Not like they're changing very often either, right? That's a pretty solid, right?
Yeah.
We, by the way, in the pre-show, if you're a Patreon subscriber, in the pre-show, Christian and I spent some time talking about AI and just some of the things that we like about it. And so if you want to go for Patreon subscribers, if you want to go listen to that on the Patreon page, you can do that as well. So when do you think, so the next step, tell me again, what's the next step for you? You're studying for what?
I'm studying for the written exam for the instrument rating.
Okay.
And then I'm doing the long cross-country flight tomorrow, which is the last flying requirement.
Nice.
And then,
of course, I'm keeping you up late podcasting.
That's okay.
It's super important.
I negotiated a delayed start by an hour, so we're doing great.
What time do you kick off in the morning?
8 a.m. So not too bad.
Okay, we'll get you out of here.
Sometimes it's 7 or 6 a.m. So this is a gift. We'll
hold tight to an hour to make sure we get you. We get you there. Cross country goes how far? Like how far?
It's not as crazy as you think. It's 175 nautical miles, but it's 3 towered airports, 3 different types of approaches. So you have to meet the minimum 150 nautical mile distance, and then you also have to have 3 distinct approaches, which means you're going to fly a particular path. So when it's all said and done, it's plus or minus 25 nautical miles from the minimum if you're going to try to do kind of a triangle. It's not like you're flying coast to coast, but
when you think cross country, you think the Pony Express. You're
and see, my math is wrong. It's 250 nautical miles. Okay. So my route tomorrow is 256 nautical miles. So I give myself a little buffer because you never want to have an administrative error that like you flew 1 nautical mile too short.
Just circle around the airport.
So it's good when you're going like 120 knots to 250 nautical miles is, straight line distance would be, 2 hours and change. But when you have to do approaches and stops and whatnot, it, adds a lot of time.
Take back off again. So what's after that? Anything? Or are you done for a while and you just...
Well, then I'll take the actual check ride for the instrument rating in January.
Okay.
And so hopefully by January I'll be instrument rated. And then I do plan to go into commercial. So I'll start doing commercial training after.
Nice.
Yeah.
Super cool.
So not ATP, not like I'm going to fly 777s for an airline.
Yeah.
But just commercial license so I can fly
commercial aircraft.
Fly part 135. So
nice. Okay. Cool. Well, congrats on that as well.
Yeah.
Love it. Maybe someday I get a chance to go up in the air with you.
Absolutely.
We'll do some.
I take folks up all the time. We go hang out and do stuff. And either I'll get a slightly upgraded engine to get out to your way more efficiently or vice versa. We'll figure something out.
Jet would be nice. I'd be okay with that. That'd be maybe pick me up and we'll go to Vegas or something like that. Or Montana, one of the two. That'd be cool. Well, anyways, congrats on that. All that work to get that done. I know you're loving it, so it's not even work for you because you like it so much. But congrats on getting that all that stuff done, and good luck as we think about January. Okay, we'll spend the remainder of the time. we've got 30 minutes left in the time I have with Christian because he's got to fly tomorrow. But that's probably the perfect amount of time, and I couldn't believe this when you told it to me. You're like, Jim, thinking a little different about crypto. Now, let's be really, really clear. As Jim's been in the crypto space for the last, 7-8 years maybe or so, you've always been like, I'm not sure. I don't think so. Kind of, you've had a healthy skepticism, which has always been great. I actually thought you would embrace it a lot faster than you did. Tonight, maybe you're coming at it from a different point of view. So give us a little background. What's going on inside that head of yours?
Yeah. I think when we first really started talking about crypto on the show, which is probably about, I don't know, at least 7 or 8 years ago. Now.
Yeah, it might be more. It might be like 9.
Yeah.
8 or 9. Anyway, I have to go back and look it up.
I think a lot of the focus at the time was on mining and kind of the very Wild West. And like, a lot of people were really interested in mining, and what you could do with it and how you would make money off of it, etc. But I think for a long time, my skepticism was kind of twofold. One is like, how do you assert value in cryptocurrency, especially before like the kind of era of altcoins and meme coins. And, there's, I think, over 40,000 coins now in the cryptocurrency world. Like, how do you make sense of these things? How much power are you going to suck to do mining a thing that's becoming more and more finite and unprofitable over time? And so there were a lot of, I think, practical dimensions that for a while it felt like a very cool technology and interesting kind of place to tinker, but it never felt like it was going enterprise or mainstream. It always felt like it was in a niche technology group. And I think story time. So you'll appreciate this story because once upon a time in circa 2014, myself and Paul Allen were in a basement in a United Methodist church somewhere in downtown DC. Neither of us really had any idea where we were. We got there through a DC meetup page because Paul was really, just captivated by crypto and decentralized internet. And so he's like, Christian, we've got to go see Vitalik speak about Ethereum. And I'm like, who is Vitalik? What is Ethereum? What are you even talking about, Paul? And Vitalik Buterin is the inventor of Ethereum, which today is the second largest cryptocurrency by market cap. It's a $500 billion asset. And, famous Wall Street bull over the last couple of years, Tom Lee, is very well known for saying there's no such thing. There's never been an asset class in the world that has reached a $1 trillion plus market cap that just disappeared and went to zero. Right. And he was talking about Bitcoin in that particular quote, but, Bitcoin has really created its primary focus as being a store of value. But Vitalik recognized something that was really not understood at the time. He was definitely ahead of his time in this space. And he's a pretty eccentric guy. I mean, it was not clear or easy to follow his discussion or his presentation. And like, unless you were deeply in the early world of crypto days, it was extremely hard to follow his presentation, his understanding, especially as, 2014 era Christian and Paul Allen sitting in the basement where there's like 9 other people listening to this kind of scrawny guy talk about, really esoteric stuff for the time. And so I got out of that and I'm like, Paul, I was like, what did we just listen to? And, he is now arguably going to be, in my opinion, he already is, but I think more so. I think Ethereum has a very real world chance of actually being a larger market cap than Bitcoin over time. And it is becoming really, to me, it does something that Bitcoin can't do, which is provide the smart contract layer. And my big pivot around why cryptocurrency is so much more interesting to me now is because this was the year you really saw the regulatory framework, the legislation, and the institutional adoption and interest in cryptocurrencies really start to firm up, because the risks and regulatory compliance space is starting to become much clearer. And so now you're really starting to see big money kind of get their hands wet with this. And so that it became much more interesting to me the moment that it kind of became clear that enterprise is going hard for this.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating to me about Ethereum is that it is the layer for stablecoins. And stablecoins are really going to be one of the foundational aspects of just cryptocurrency long term. So not just, Bitcoin or Ethereum, but, a lot of companies actually tokenizing assets and building smart contracts within their products and services that tokenize their ecosystem. That's all running on top of Ethereum. And when you talk about the AI intersection with crypto, we're starting to see a lot more compelling use cases where crypto is not just about, the Silk Road black market payments that it was 15 years ago, or let's mine some coin. Yeah. It's now really about how are we tokenizing the world, getting banks and institutions outside of transactions, building application layer on top of the cryptocurrency, and then letting regulatory frameworks like the Genius Act and the Clarity Act provide regulatory assurance and the ability for innovation to take place in this space. And so, like, if you look at, some of the more, what I'll say, new kid on the block currencies and what they're doing, they're playing really interesting gambits in the AI space. Like WorldCoin is now seeking to be the proof of human coin. And no one has really focused on solving proof of human, yet alone in the context of AI. And so you're starting to see these very purpose-driven cryptocurrencies that also have institutional adoption, that have an application layer, that are integrating with AI capabilities and are getting regulatory backing. And then on top of that are people are building huge treasuries around these. They're staking the assets. They're accumulating the assets. And so I think we are actually at a point, in my opinion, where when we went away from a CBDC approach to currency for crypto in the US, and we really adopted and embraced just the raw technology itself and decided to put regulatory constraints around the whole ecosystem versus trying to prescribe to one particular stable coin, I think that's just opened a world opportunity and has sent a lot of strong demand signals that give me a lot more confidence that crypto will see mainstream adoption and not just be this kind of cool kids on the block. I have a wallet and I can do particular things on the internet with it, which was one of my major skepticisms about it for a long time. But, when Ethereum stands to become the payment layer, this concept of like, oh, you pay a 3.5% transaction fee to charge your credit card, and oh, now the stores are passing those fees on to the consumer because they don't want to pay the credit card fees and have a cut from their margins. Like, a lot of this stuff is about to get blown up. And so I think the other humorous part of the reason why you're seeing the institutional interest is because they realize, the old guard realizes they're about to get flushed, and the new names in town realize they have a real opportunity here to reshape the financial industry. And if that wasn't enough or interesting enough, the way in which we're starting to integrate it into AI technology space, I think, is much, much more compelling than what anyone would have thought back in 2013, 2014, especially when AI was not it was much more a conversation about big data and cloud when crypto was in its early adoption. So we find ourselves with the same foundational technology of crypto, much more matured, but now also in a much more mature AI ecosystem. And so it has turned me into a very kind of bullish practitioner in the space from where I was even as recently as 6 months ago.
But you're really coming at it from a platform integration value, not from a currency perspective, but what it can do, not a mining perspective, but a currency perspective. Would I be safe to assume? I mean, this isn't you chasing. I mean, by the way, I just did a little research while you were talking. The first kind of real mention of cryptocurrency on Home Gadget Geeks was July 25th of 2015 when I interviewed Edward Weininger, who was a Alpha Bitcoin guy here in the Omaha area. It was really my first, parlay, that's not the right word, foray into cryptocurrency. And he came on the show and talked about it. The price, you want to guess the price of Bitcoin, Christian, on July 15th, 2015?
Oh, it's like probably like $20.
No, not that cheap. I wish it was that cheap. Okay. No, I don't, because I would have been mad. But close, $288 that month was the average price, right? $288. I think when he was on the show, that was like $264. That's the number I remember. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking, Edward said to me, Jim, dollar cost average, just dollar cost average for the next 12 months. That's a $350,000 investment today, 10 years later, right? If I put $100 a month in for a year.
Yep.
Good. Now, the advantage is we did do some of that mining stuff. It has done very well. I balanced at the end of last year, I balanced out my Ethereum and my Bitcoin to be equal. So I'm treating these things like real stuff because they're real money at this point, right?
Yep.
And in this year, Ethereum has done much better than Bitcoin from that standpoint. But I sense your excitement is more in the technology behind what it can do. When we talked about Tether years ago, right, the very first kind of stable coin, I don't know, I say very first, but the most popular stable coin in Tether. Coinbase is now USDC. There's a few other, there's a few other ones out there as well. But you're more excited about the potential for what it can do which is what Edward said 10 years ago, by the way. He was doing the mining, right? But he'd always said, hey, this has got some potential to replace things that we do from a currency perspective. Is that what I hear you saying?
No, absolutely. And I think one of the big changes for me too is like, we would have these round and round arguments 10 plus years ago around like, well, what really is the value of a Bitcoin? Like, what is its value anchored in? And it's like, well, it's finite. It's finite supply. So that's that literally is the argument, is that it's finite supply as a store of value. And because it has cryptographic properties and it can be traced and have a ledger and be supposedly secure, et cetera, that, this is a better store of value than gold as a gold standard. And like, actually, when you think about it, and when you think about the fact that the United States, delinked from the gold standard, and then you think about how inflation of the dollar has grown so much in the last 50 years, and then you think about, well, wait a second, like a government can print more money because it's what allows them to be, either politically opportunistic or balance the books or whatever it is they want to do by printing that additional money, or injecting liquidity into a market, or trying to come back from a financial crisis. But like, you can't do that with Bitcoin. And not only can you not do it, there's no like big belly button treasury to go coerce to go turn on the printer machine. And then when you really think on top of it, like, well, wait a second, there's estimates that say up to 34% of Bitcoin is dead, in the sense that no one can access it, or no one knows what happened to it,
It's
or
lost.
it's
A hard
non-liquid.
drives,
It's lost. So like in some ways, it really is probably more finite than gold. Now you can argue that gold has, again, real world applications in terms of like it's an actual mineral, like you can actually do stuff with it. Like peace, totally get it. But in terms of what people were using it for as a store of value against a currency, like it's very hard to argue that gold is a better store of value at this point. Now, certainly gold has done very well as a financial instrument and commodity, so it's not like gold is going away anytime soon in favor of crypto. But I think when you get over that argument first, and then you get over the, like the hobby aspects of the mining and building the network and these other things, like that's the first big step. But I don't think I would have been, even if all that had transpired, I don't think I would be as excited as I am now without some of the recent legislation coming out, because up until 2025, we were very much in this kind of wait and see mode of what each country in the world is going to do with their crypto legislation. And, the US was definitely heading down a path of, oh, we'll be crypto, but we're going to centrally own it. And it's going to be a stable coin, aka we're going to be able to inject all the same financial wonk, if you will, that takes place with, regulating the value of the dollar or the value of a bond instrument, right? And so the fact that we went this hard 180 and now it's kind of like, no, like the crypto industry is going to go do crypto innovation and let the best parties win, essentially. And oh, by the way, here's all the regulatory framework by which we're going to kind of put guardrails in place from you like completely shooting yourself in the foot, but otherwise we're going to support you in doing this. That to me is the moment that the crypto space really lit up. And like, sure, when the new administration got elected, crypto immediately took off the whole 9 yards, but I wasn't even convinced then. It really hasn't been until I've seen Congress get these bills done and see how quickly institutions are taking advantage of that and starting to build the stablecoin layer, that it's like, okay, like, yeah, this is now reaching a critical mass that was not, in my opinion, an assured thing 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
And again, that's just in the financial innovation space. That's not even in this kind of new space, which, if you will, not, like to me, the AI application layer that's being built on crypto is almost like replacing the coolness of what mining was as a niche hobby, right? But now it has the capability to be potentially far more reaching. And so there's still a lot of hobbyist aspect while also seeing that enterprise adoption. And I use that term very loosely right now, but very, very interesting to me. And so I'm paying a lot more attention than I ever have.
I like it a lot. I like it a lot. I remember conversations. You and I both had the opportunity to hang out with Vint Cerf, right? And one of the founding fathers of the internet. Super great guy, amazing guy, actually very personable, and some great conversations. Vint and I had a conversation when I was this would have been around 2015, and he was on campus, and I got to spend a bunch of time with him, which wasn't fair, but it just worked out that way. I spent a whole day with him, driving him around and talking to him. We spent some time talking about crypto, and in those days he had two big issues with it. And one was it was too hard for the average person. Like he was like, today, if you have money in a bank and that money disappears, you have somebody to call. With crypto, no one to call. You can't even call Ghostbusters. They cannot help you. Like it's you're on your own kind of thing.
Yep.
And then his second, which is true, and it's still kind of that way, although the fiat on-ramps with Coinbase and other services that are doing this are there to kind of help with that level, right? Get people in, customer service. Listen, there were days on the Coinbase side of things where I was like, I don't know if these guys are going to make it. Like, I'm not sure this is going to be a real thing, right? And even with nice hash and some of those mining things. We learned some very important lessons about hack and hackery going on at that point. Vince's other objection to crypto at the time was regulation. He was like, we know we can't trust ourselves. As much as we'd like to think open source software and open this and open that is great, we still have to have checks and balances in place to just make sure we're not, you said, shooting ourselves in the foot. There's other, kicking ourselves in the nuts is the other way that works. So I too, as we think about, you're talking about AI, but there's some DeFi layers that are starting to land on top. Ken Brackett and I did some early work with Chia, which is a storage-based crypto, and they're making a big run at being able to kind of replicate stock market transactions for securities on the blockchain, right? And they're not the first. They're one of a bunch that are trying to do it. But we often think of the blockchain as decentralized currency, but it could also be decentralized securities from that standpoint, including bonds, right? Not just stocks, but it could be bonds as well. I don't know, does that, when you think about that, Christian, does that also add to it for you?
I mean, absolutely, because to me, it's no different than Ethereum's vision of being able to tokenize everything and then apply smart contracts on top of what you've tokenized to create inherent relationships that require no middle entity. I think we talked the last time I was on, I talked a little bit about the storage token and basically like you're not mining, but like you're providing hosted storage, and storage is a stable token that pays out for the storage you host, et cetera. And so like, to me, that is a very basic example of tokenizing a particular application or use case and having a contract be applied to it. And so I think when you talk about any of these domains, like, yeah, I can tokenize a bond, right? Or I can tokenize a general security,
right?
Or, like even there's been a lot of news reporting publicly around Amazon thinking about a stable coin, right? And so like, imagine if you're tokenizing like your Amazon.com shopping cart, like what does that even mean, right? So there's a lot of interesting things where, or hey, I'm gonna pay with Tether, or I'm gonna check out with Ethereum, or like, things where it was like, it used to be really, I think I remember, was it Dell was one of the first kind of big names that you could buy in Bitcoin. And like, that was like a really kind of novel example of what I think is about to go very mainstream in the next year as a result of this legislation. And that's just one example, right? That's just the kind of like the retail client front door for like the retail side of it. But there's just a lot of other stuff that's about to go on where it's going to be not only a financial layer, but it is going to be a type of internet unto itself. And I never really appreciated what Vitalik meant about a decentralized internet, right? Because like, there were a lot of kind of cagey discussions about like, oh, you'd run like a web browser on the blockchain, and like your bits would be stored in the thing, and like very Web 3.0. But I see the term internet much more loosely now, because there's all these other domains of exchange that are taking place digitally, that it's not necessarily an exchange of information in the way you're accustomed to, where you're downloading a web page and getting textual, audio, video content. It's now an amalgamation of different types of content that's being exchanged back and forth over different layers that have different protocols and transactions and exchange processes. And so that to me is truly fascinating, because it means that we used to, and many go back to like Home Gadget Geeks, or maybe even Home Tech Podcast, when we would talk about like the Tor network and some of these early concepts of not just decentralized internet, but kind of anonymized internet, or like what's the dark web, or like some of these alternate forms of internet. And in many ways, I think the blockchain is starting to become this kind of replacement to that and be its own form of internet that is going to make up a big part of what's going across the raw wire when you're just counting up bytes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as you talk about the blockchain, we get distracted because of the coin aspect of it, because of the currency or the currency replacement aspect of it, because of the DeFi stuff that may sit on top of it. We forget the underlying architecture is a blockchain. And
Right.
I still think there's some great opportunities for us to harness when we think about information. I was just talking to somebody about this today as we were, as I was going into work. I think about, so the other day I did some work on voice cloning myself so that at work, when they want to use me, they don't have to book time in the studio. Just write some stuff out and I'll say it for you through my voice clone, right? That'd be, yeah. So we're working on those kinds of things. And somebody said to me, by the way, this isn't like brand new. This stuff's been around for a couple years, but we're starting to use it. And I like it. So they said to me, well, how can we be sure that those people have permission to use your voice in that kind of way? And there's some things they're doing, but I do think the blockchain is actually a perfect place to store a formatted voice print for me that says, hey, this is me. It's verified as me. No one can change it as me. And it's completely public, right? And so at any time, that can be compared up against who I am from a voice print standpoint. And then,
See,
Bob's
you should be a user of WorldCoin because it's like a variation on proof of human.
Right.
It's a derivative.
Yeah. That's, no, you're right. Proof of human. That's I didn't hear that the first time you said it, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about here, right? And I've always thought, listen, there's no reason property taxes and property values, every county should it be on a blockchain for those kinds of things, right? That's the next iteration of these kinds of things being on a blockchain, not associated with a coin. You don't need we're not mining things. That's just blockchain technology. One of the things I think Bitcoin has done for the blockchain is really figured out how does it work best, right? Because Bitcoin did some things and they're regretting at this point, right? They're like a little slow, right? Ethereum is trying to make up for that. And then Ethereum has done some things to change their own blockchain to make things work, right? From that standpoint. And, so I think there are still some really good real world examples of how, as you say, the internet as a blockchain, right? I think there's some applications in there where the back end of that is a blockchain, right? Doing its, however that's derived in whatever ways, right? We can create a blockchain without having to create a coin.
Yeah.
Securing the blockchain is in figuring out how that works. That's another thing on its own. But, that is one of those things I keep thinking about. It's like, I think we're just still scratching the surface on it's not for everything. You don't need to throw the blockchain at everything, right?
But I do think it's for a lot more than what I gave it credit for most of the time.
Welcome, Christian. Thank you. Oh my God, you're here. No, it's great. Listen, I've enjoyed the times, you and I have been talking this. I mean, Cyber Frontiers 44. I looked that one up here while we were talking too. That was 2018. You and I spent some time talking about that. You and I have been talking about that for a long time. So listen, I've always appreciated your thought leadership on this and your candidness of not giving in when it was crazy and then coming around to it today and being like, oh, okay, no, there's some interesting things now. And I think it's just matured like anything else, right? Remember the early days of the internet?
Oh, absolutely.
Remember the early days of internet banking, right? It was like, woo.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What do you think? You mentioned this a second ago and we got just a few minutes left. I'll ask you this question. You said AI and blockchain or AI and crypto. Where do those two intersect, or do they? I mean, in your world of that, when you say that, what do you mean by that? Or maybe I misheard you.
No, I think you heard me actually really well. So, a few things. So you have I would say at least 4 or 5 different categories where you now are, I would say we're kind of firmly squared up into agentic AI, or we'll just call it purpose-driven AI. And so like we can think at a very basic level, like think about what Tesla is doing with full self-driving autonomous vehicles, right? And imagine a world where your autonomous self-driving vehicle goes and parks to get charged up, and you're not like getting out, going to the machine, typing in your digits, putting in your card. Like the car is just pulling up, it's dropping its Ethereum tokens when it gets near an NFC reader, and your charging starts. Like that's it. And so yeah, you wouldn't call that AI by itself, but it's kind of that full layer of the robotics, the automated transaction, the no man in the middle, humans out of the loop, purpose-driven payments. And we would really call that a fully machine-to-machine economy, or machine-to-machine transaction and scale. But then because cryptocurrency gives you your cryptographic trust and provenance about what's going on, it stands to solve a lot of interesting class of problems in AI around, like, how do you know if this thing that was generated came from a human versus an AI? How do you know that it was true versus hallucinated? So like you could think of a really basic example of where, like, you know, AI, agentic AI for case law makes up a legal case to present to a judge because it fits all the parameters it needs to convince the judge of a thing. But you could imagine a blockchain recording all these news events on it as what were historically true events that happened, and have the AI be able to be trust verified against a given blockchain to drive out some of the effects of hallucinations or other things that are kind of still being ironed out of the AI side of the technology. And then, you know, you're also just getting into some of these other economies of scale where I think, you know, going back to Ethereum and the smart contract layer, like you're going to have AI models running on the chain, which is a very kind of frontier topic. Like when you talk about what is the cyber frontier of where these two things interact, you know, imagine really crazy stuff, right? Where your AI model is running a trading strategy for you, right? And so like the model and the logic is now living in the chain, and it's making buy and sell decisions based on what it's seeing go on in the chain. And that's just stuff where like a human would be like trying to do this thing over here and this thing over here, and like no, they're just fully integrated, living and working cohesively together. Now that's again a very that's a financial specific example, but it shows you an example where AI is applying itself but then also running on a financial based technology. And then we've already talked about like the identity and reputation aspects for, well, we've talked more about the trust side, but what I was talking about earlier with WorldCoin in particular, to me is an extension of what crypto started with, being able to validate like a wallet and where did the money come from, and can you validate the transaction? And now we're putting this kind of next layer on top where now we want to validate who's the human, what's human activity versus agentic activity. What are some of the proofs that you would want to do for identity and reputation between those two assets? And then like, how do AI agents build reputation over time on something like a blockchain? And what does that mean based on the use case? Yeah. And then you can tokenize all this stuff, right? So it's like, think about how many billions, you know, hundreds of billions of dollars are going into building the power and data center infrastructure to run these giant models for training and building the next foundational models. And now you can think about, you know, instead of like a subscription to get a certain number of tokens to get access to some type of shared compute for your AI, you're tokenizing AI compute and paying, you know, what we call like training tokens are now literally being mapped to financial tokens, and that is providing the consumption model for how you do pay as you go AI, just in a very utility agnostic manner. And so these are just some examples of where the technologies are eerily very have a lot of synergy going on, that we've barely scratched the surface of this stuff. Like a lot of the things I'm talking about, some exist in early conceptual stuff, but a lot of these things we really just have not kind of scratched the surface on.
For sure. Christian, I'm going to leave you with this question. Maybe next time you're on, you can talk more about this. But I'm kind of interested just in your quick thoughts on these open AI models that you can download through Olama or LM Studio, or right. They're open models. They're not generally the most current ones. They do take some resources to run. I've got some machines. The M4 runs some of those pretty well. I've got a gaming rig that I built a couple years ago. Runs it. It's got 128 gig of RAM, so it runs it pretty well. Any quick thoughts on like bringing AI home and running it locally for whatever reasons?
Yeah, I think it is an economy of scale, for one. For two, I think there's still a lot of healthy skepticism that's warranted, I think, when using any type of service-based AI, right? Like, unless you're one of those people that really knows the exact terms of service you sign up for when you rapid click that $20 a month, like, you can get a lot more assurances if you're running a local model without an internet connection on your own hardware. So there may be some examples where you want to do more sensitive analysis or work where, take the portable model. Is it going to be the best outcome necessarily of what the paid premium interconnected thing would be? Probably not, but you probably get an 80-20 solution in a lot of those scenarios. And I think what you're going to see is it may not matter over time, in the sense that the best models in the world are going to be held by the few, and they're going to be held by the big kind of tech names that are competing to have the best foundational models in the world. And so the foundational models are going to be kept very close hold. And then kind of the N-1 or N-2 models that were less powerful, as they become less relevant to the arms race of the foundational models, those will just start getting released like candy over time. And they'll get cheaper to run and require less compute to run. And so like in 6 months from now, that local model that you can download will probably be twice as powerful as what it is as of recording this conversation, right? So it's, I think that gap gets much smaller, much quicker for most applications that you might care about for running in kind of a portable AI environment. And certainly, like, if you don't want to just throw like $50,000 at solving a problem, and like you don't want to also see the pop-up every 2 seconds that says, hey, you've exceeded your tokens for the next X hours, like, that's not a bad answer. Like, go spin up some hardware, and maybe it takes a little longer to grind the answer out, but it's, hopefully going to grind something out, as opposed to just, being kind of stuck in a holding pattern. So do I think it's what enterprise is doing? No, I mean, they're focused on the large data center foundational model approach, and that makes sense. But I think for home environments and enthusiasts, like, you're still going to get a lot of value out of them. And there's both that kind of data privacy argument to be made, as well as just like it is an economy of scale option as well.
Yeah. I find with the local versions, I don't have enough info. I want to do customizations to them. I want to add memory files to them, and they're not built for that at all now. They're kind of like, no, just go with what I gave you. It's, as you were explaining that, I was thinking this is like the military surplus model, right? You could always go to the surplus stores and buy the BDUs from 25 years ago, right? Or you could get stuff that was outdated by a long time. And that's that you got me thinking that of like, although OpenAI is being fairly generous with some of their models, and they're 20 billion, and I think they have like 102 billion model, that I can't run the big one locally. I don't have the power for that one. 20 billion?
It's crazy.
Okay, I'm getting close, right? That's still fairly slow. but it gives me the opportunity to run those. So keep in mind, like crypto, I'm dropping my toes into it just enough to know what we're talking about and what we're doing. I wish I'd have done the dollar cost averaging intro for crypto.
You and me both.
2015, I would have been, I would have been retired at this point by now, but maybe not. But anyways, Christian, it's always great to have you on. Congratulations again on the new one. And I'm excited that you're excited about being a dad. And that is super cool. And there's great things ahead. If you want to know where you're going to be in a couple of years, just look at Uyghur. And if you follow him on Facebook, you see he's all into being a dad, and it's pretty 100%. Great. It's pretty great. So, hey, can you hang around while I close this thing up? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Couple reminders on the way out. One, if you want to join, and we had somebody join this week. Came from the old home server show days and said, hey, is there a forums anywhere where I can ask questions? Dave shut down home server show forums. So you can head out to theaverageguy.tv/Discord. Not as active, but still a great place to hang out. If you got some questions you want to ask about the show, just tag me or Christian if you got some questions, and we'll get there as soon as we can. And then don't forget the AverageGuy.tv platform for 15 years, hosted by Maple Grove Partners, right? Secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. That's Christian behind the things there. Gary does some work too there. Is it 50-50, Christian, or from a Gary Christian standpoint, 50-50, or is it more Gary than Christian, or is it more the other way around?
It's always a bit of a revolving platter, because some months he's like way ahead of me on like, hey, we really need to be doing this, and hey, are we thinking about this? And I'm like, yeah, I'll get there, and then oh yeah, we really got to do it. So he actually keeps me honest in a lot of ways, and he's definitely a big part of administratively why we stay on top of things. And love it. I push a lot on the hardware and platform side of things lately.
Sweet.
So it's been pretty fast. I mean, if you are out browsing at Average Guy and you're getting bad page times, you must be on dial-up still, because
it's pretty fast.
I'll just randomly test it from like random locations. I'll just pull out my phone and hit the Average Guy homepage, and like it's just there. Like it doesn't think about it. So
it's pretty great. I listen, I've always appreciated you hosting that. You've optimized it for podcasters. It's reasonable. If you're thinking about hosting something, don't host it yourself. Just head over to maplegrovepartners.com. Let them host it. They do a bang up job. They're always worried about you and your security. And so check it out today, maplegrovepartners.com. If you want to send me an email with feedback, and always appreciate that as well, Jim@theaverageguy.tv. And then we are live almost every Thursday. I don't have anything scheduled. With my neck being the way it is, I may take a couple weeks off. So hang tight, friends. I'm having trouble. This one is not going away. I've spent most of the show leaning back in my chair, and I'm not in pain at the moment, but as soon as I move again, it's going to be incredibly painful. So we'll see how it goes. Join the Discord group to find out how things are happening or whatever. If you're listening on a podcast episode, you got a couple weeks to catch up. Thanks for coming out tonight. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.
Good night.